the 1998 peace agreement, we see an increase in migration coming to Northern Ireland. It was really important in terms of certain sectors within the Northern Ireland economy, particularly the agri-food sector, the hospitality sector, the haulage industry. And some of these people, some of these migrants working in these sectors, some of these people are included in what we reckon to be between 23 and 30,000 people who commute every day across the border. So they are cross-border workers. They live on one side of the border, so Northern Ireland, commute to the Republic of Ireland to work every day. And part of that cross-border worker population, they're actually EU migrants who just happen, so they could be from, I don't know, Czech Republic, living in the Northern Ireland, but commute every day to the Republic of Ireland to work. So this is going to be complicated now by Brexit. In what constitutes the only formal position on Brexit established by the Northern Ireland Executive, i.e. our government, prior to its demise, we don't have a government at the moment, the then First and Deputy First Ministers set out their concerns regarding access to the EU labour market. Their joint letter of August 2016 to the Prime Minister Theresa May noted how, quote, "It's critical to our economy that our businesses retain their competitiveness and do not incur additional costs. We therefore need to retain as far as possible the ease with which we currently trade with EU member states and, also importantly, retain access to labour. Policies need to be sufficiently flexible to allow access to unskilled as well as highly skilled labour. This applies not only to businesses in the private sector, but also to public sector employers who are heavily dependent on EU and other migrant labour. Economic competitiveness is the order of the day when considering the human dimension connecting Northern Ireland to Europe and beyond. There is no recognition here of the potential migrants from the EU and elsewhere have in moving Northern Ireland beyond a two-dimensional concept of itself founded on conflictual nationalist and unionist narratives. In contrast, and although also highlighting the economic drivers requiring continued access to migrant labour, the Scottish Government's approach acknowledges other benefits that underpin a vision that assumes a two-way flow of people. So, quote, "As an economy, we need the inward flow of people not just to support the growth of our businesses and services, but to provide diversity and vibrancy to our communities. These benefits are mutual. Over the years, many Scottish and UK employees have enjoyed the opportunity to work in other EU countries, develop skills, and often bring back much needed expertise and ideas." So this is very different from what we have in terms of the letter from our First and Deputy First, or former First and Deputy First Minister of Northern Ireland, where migration was just about labour, access to labour. Here you have the Scottish Government's approach, but gives you a different kind of perspective. In the absence of a Northern Ireland executive able to present a unified position on the negotiations over the UK's withdrawal from the EU, an unlikely possibility given the existing divides on the matter, what political discourse currently takes place on Brexit subordinates any vision of migrants' future place in Northern Ireland within arguments where Europe is largely the foil for the rehashing of long-running enmities. This is not in any way to dismiss genuine concerns underpinning them, some of which we at the Centre for Cross-Border Studies share, particularly in terms of the future of the Good Friday Agreement, but much of the current political debate in Northern Ireland can be distilled into two opposing visions, each with their own post-Brexit border. An orange one between Northern Ireland and the Republic, cementing Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom, and a green one in the middle of the Irish Sea, separating Northern Ireland from Great Britain and seen as a price worth paying to maintain relations with the Republic and by extension with Europe. The two are mutually incompatible in the eyes of their respective proponents, and migrants are of secondary concern in these debates. Without a more generous vision, capable of viewing migrants as more than simply units of productivity, Northern Ireland risks condemning itself to isolation within both the orange and green borders. As the post-Brexit process of attempting to realise the notion of a global Britain advocated by Theresa May and the Conservative Party gets underway, what may currently be an unintended omission of Northern Ireland in that shorthand term for the UK, a global Britain, remember Britain doesn't include Northern Ireland, that could become a reality. Unless Northern Ireland's political classes begin a genuine engagement with the European question that is outward-looking and welcoming of voices originating from elsewhere, and not one based on antagonistic desires to either privilege the region's position within the UK or its relationship to the Republic of Ireland, they're likely to find themselves in a post-Brexit world where Dublin, London, as well as Edinburgh and Cardiff will have left them marooned in a desert island of their own making. There are already possible signs that this desert island will be increasingly inhospitable to those from outside. Open displays of a form of British nationalism hostile to those of other nations, races and religions, particularly Islam, appear to have found more fertile ground in Northern Ireland since the June 2016 referendum. In this sad fact, Northern Ireland may not be any different from other parts of the United Kingdom, where manifestations of a virulent nationalism have drawn renewed vigour from the approaching reality of Brexit. But in Northern Ireland, these are bound up with a native sectarianism that not only has a history of connecting itself to far-right British movements, such as the relations between loyalist paramilitary groups and Combat 18, but also finds new platforms in its attempts to attract new converts. A recent example of this, only a couple of weeks ago, was the rally in Belfast city centre, right in front of City Hall, organised by a new group calling itself Northern Ireland Against Terrorism, which offered a platform to the leader and other members of the far-right Britain First movement. Cloaked under the auspices of a local group whose name may initially suggest a cause worthy of widespread support, members of Britain First were able to add their anti-immigrant, anti-Muslim sentiments to those of Northern Ireland Against Terrorism, whose true nature can be seen in its call for support for their rally. So this is their Facebook page announcement announcing this rally that they were going to hold, and it was just a couple of weeks ago. And even just by the start, I call upon all British patriots. That's who they're calling. And remember, this is in Northern Ireland. So even just the word British patriots, that immediately excludes then all those in Northern Ireland who don't identify themselves as British, who identify themselves as Irish. And Northern Ireland stands united with mainland patriots. Mainland, again, is a word that's used by, let's say, those from Protestant Unionist community. You know, if you're an Irish person in Northern Ireland, you never refer to England, Scotland and Wales as being the mainland. In the present circumstances, those who are the primary targets of threatening graffiti aimed at private landlords, again, this has just happened in the last few weeks, or the paramilitary flags appearing in social housing developments intended to encourage cross-community neighbourhoods, the primary targets are no longer those from the opposing side of the traditional loyalist Republican divide. And just so, in case you don't know, that flag there with the purple one there at the top, that's the UVF, that's the Ulster Volunteer Force. Now, I have to be careful here. Ulster Volunteer Force was actually created in the First World War. It was an Ulster regiment, fought in the First World War, but it then became a paramilitary organisation, and that is really what this is about. And these social housing schemes, that some of these schemes are intended to encourage communities where those who are nationalists and unionists live together. And yet this one here, and it's happened in many, these shared social housing schemes, flags have immediately appeared claiming territory for one side or another. So this is an example of that. So the targets of these flags in the past would be, so if you saw a loyalist flag like the UVF flag around a council estate, it means keep out nationalists, we don't want you here, or warning landlords beware locals first. Locals would mean, you know, us unionists, not Catholics. Now it's not that anymore. It's not about Catholics not coming in. Now it's about migrants not coming in here. So, yep, the targets now are migrants, mainly Eastern European, who began to move to Northern Ireland in the wake of the 1998 Good Friday Agreement that brought with it a wave of optimism and economic development. So when you got the 1998 agreement, in the years that followed, you had great economic development, and with it, increase in migration. And now these migrants are the targets of these types of graffiti attacks, as we see here. Right, but now it's important that I place these trends within their wider context, because I don't want to exaggerate, because in some of the examples I'm showing you here, this graffiti, these flags, they're very close to where, I mean literally yards from where I live, so I'm close to it, and I've seen these things, and I've seen other racist incidents after the Brexit vote, so that I witnessed this personally, so I don't want to exaggerate, so I want to give you a context here for this. Official figures produced by the Police Service of Northern Ireland, the PSNI, actually show that following a steady increase in racist motivated incidents and crimes from 2011 to 2014, the overall trend since then has been generally a downward one. So from here you start to see increase in racist motivated attacks, crimes, but then you start to see a decrease in those crimes from 2014 onwards. So the official figures show a different picture. They see actually a decrease in these types of incidents. Also, instances of xenophobia, such as the Northern Ireland Against Terrorism rally, are also countered by demonstrations promoting a very different and welcoming Northern Ireland. So the rally that I was talking to you about before, these are the counter rallies that happened on the same day as that one was with Britain First was involved. These are the counter rallies right beside it. In fact, the numbers of people far outnumbered those that were taking part in the far right one. And I love that picture. This is, you know, someone taking a photograph of the Britain First rally with their I Love the EU bag on them. Nevertheless, the predominant political discourse in Northern Ireland and elsewhere in the UK is one where migrants are part of a market of human commodities, a labour market, and in which arguments are generally about the relative desirability and means of continued access to that market in order to feed the post-Brexit UK economy. And to emphasise, by way of conclusion, that such a discourse is operating in what I would characterise as a troubling environment in Northern Ireland, I would like you to consider the political landscape made evident by the results of the EU referendum and the recent general election. So this is a map of the results of the EU referendum, including, of course, Northern Ireland. So in Northern Ireland, 55.8% voted to remain in the EU. But not only were many of the electoral areas in yellow, these are the ones who voted to remain, located in the border region. So imagine this is the Republic of Ireland, which is obviously cut off, did take place in the referendum. A lot of those who voted to remain are in the border regions of Northern Ireland. So here you've got the Remain vote. They also form part of what is now a nationalist or Republican belt, apparently encircling a unionist or loyalist electorate based away from the border with the Republic of Ireland. And this is what I'm talking about. So here you see the referendum results, you see the yellow, the Remain, all the border counties voted to remain in the EU, and you see the blue, the Leave. Belfast, most of Belfast voted to remain with one exception, in East Belfast, which voted to leave. This is a map showing you the results of the last general election, the snap general election. So green, not very subtle, denotes those constituencies where a nationalist MP was voted, and the red indicates where a DUP, so a unionist MP, was voted for. So you kind of see an overlap here. Those who voted to remain in the EU in the border counties, those who voted for nationalist MPs, there's a complete overlap. So you're starting to see here a real political divide happening in Northern Ireland. The political divide could hardly be starker, and it leaves little room for hope that politicians in Northern Ireland will consider the future of post-Brexit migration other than in economic terms. That possibility may be even more remote, given the fact